Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back on this beautiful Monday night, the 16th of February 2026. Yes, it's been a public holiday here in Uganda, the Janan Lumu Day, but quite an exhausting one for me. Given the amount of up and down that I was through throughout the entire course of the day. But yeah, we are grateful to be back. We are grateful to be here with you for tonight's broadcast, and I hope you do enjoy it as we go through it with us. Tonight we'll be talking about the FA Cup 55th round draws that have been conducted. We'll talk about referee Chris Kavanagh, who has been omitted from the next round of Premier League games. We know that those kick off on Wednesday when Arsenal take on Wolverhampton Wanderers, and will continue to the weekend officially with match day 27. So, yeah, we'll be going through that. Of course, in the morning, we did discuss the events from Italian football, where Pierre Kalulu was wrongfully sent off, in a game that saw Inter Milan win a game by 3-2. Perhaps one would argue that had it not been for the sending off of Pierre Kalulu, maybe Juventus would have walked out with a point in that one. Maybe they would have won the game. But all that is easier said than done, or easier said after we did witness what we witnessed. But we had that discussion in the morning. For those of you that could be wondering what that could be about, just simply go over to the channel and look for that morning broadcast where we talked about Luciano Spalletti, Comoli, and Cellini, how they confronted referee Federico Lapena there in the aftermath of their 3-2 loss to Inter Milan over the weekend. That was on Saturday, particularly being angered by the unfair sending off of Pierre Kalulu because the Alessandro Bastoni decided to woodwink the referee into thinking that he had been fouled, yet that could be wondering what that could be. Apologies on that. I was just having our audio tested. So really, he was woodwinked by the referee into, sending off Pierre Kalulu, and Fabio Capello has come out to, criticize what he thinks is bad behavior from Alessandro Bastoni, saying he should be, as a national team player, he should be holding himself with high standards, with a lot of honesty, and that cannot go on. And the all India submissions refreshed a number of games or a couple of scenarios through which our players have possibly made this as a trend or a trick. It's something that is ongoing in Italy, in Italian football, that referees are being woodwinked, that players are doing a lot of simulation. Michael Matovu, hi. How are you doing, my brother? Good to have you on the broadcast. For those of you that are just joining us, I say welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. If it's your first time here, do not forget to like the broadcast, but more importantly, also subscribe to the channel. I do come to you live from Kampala, Uganda, where it's 27 minutes past the hour of 11 p.m. And it's a pleasure to have you around. So, like I said, I won't go into the in-depth of what transpired in Italian football in regards to the Kalulu incident, because we did discuss that in the morning. Like I said, in case you did miss that podcast, simply go over to the live broadcast section and you see that, a headline that talks about Spalletti, talks about Comoli, as well as Cellini. You will see it over there. And then this is Nswaki, is that Nswaki? Hi, Pretoria from South Africa. I was about to say your name sounds South African. I tend to sort of struggle with the correct pronunciation of some of those names. Is that a Zulu name, or it's from a different community? Is that a Zulu name? But it's a pleasure to have you on the broadcast. I think you're about the third person to join us from South Africa. We do have Son of Soweto, one of those semi-regulars on the channel. We do have a Prince Nkosi, who is a semi-regular on the channel. Then we had somebody that described them as, was it Snow? But Snow as an American living in South Africa over the summer. You say ah, Sotho. Oh, Sotho name. Oh, okay. South Africans have the Zulu, they have the Xhosa, those that speak with a clicking sound, and things like that. But they have the Afrikaners, something like that. Anyways, it's a pleasure to have you around. So please, like I was saying, simply go over to the channel under the live broadcast. You'll find that submission there. Now, there's only one place to start because it is the hottest of news. That's at the 50th round of the FA Cup draws that have been conducted in the last couple of hours tonight on Monday night. Even though some games are still being played. For example, there's a game that is into halftime between Macclesfield Town and Brentford, and that game is still goalless at halftime. But like I said, and then there's a game that is supposed to be played, I think, on the 3rd of March, involving, is it Port Vale and Bristol City? I think, yeah, one of those games. So now, of course, the draw itself, that means we have a fixture compile or congestion. Why? Because the games in the FA Cup will be played in the first weekend of March. That's when they are expected to be played. Yes, first weekend of March. That should be around the 7th and 8th March. So that's when you should expect those fixtures to be played of the 50th round of the FA Cup. It's essentially the round of 16 because the 4th round is officially the round of 32 for which you have 16 games, and then you have 16 teams knocked out, and then you have another round of 8 games. So in terms of tonight's draw, like I said, in the morning we did touch this topic and are saying, even though contrary to some other people's views, that if you're a Premier League team, the best you can hope for or pray against is to avoid a Premier League opponent. Not because you're afraid of them, but because you know the gravitas of what it means to play a Premier League opponent. And I was quite particular to emphasize that that's more well suited for teams that are still playing in multiple competitions. And unfortunately, for Manchester City, they've been drawn against Newcastle, and they'll be going back to to St. James's Park, a place where they played already this season and won there by 2-0. That's in as far as the EFL Cup semi-final first leg is concerned. They lost there by 2-1. I think that was in the Premier League, and then for the EFL semi-final, they lost that one home and away. I think they got beat in the second leg. Was it by 3-1? So really, it's a bit tough for Man City. Why? Because an opponent, the caliber of Newcastle, requires that you field one of your better teams or one of your strong teams, if not the very strongest of 11s that is within your armor. And what that means is, more game time for some of the players that you ideally would have loved to, get rested and afford youngsters a couple of minutes. Because usually when in the early stages of these competitions, that is where teams go for an overhaul, over rotation in terms of their usual starting 11s. They get to give kids a chance. They get to give reserve players a chance. That's usually when we get to see number 2 or number 3 goalkeepers, depending on the team. That's when you will see a youngster start a game from the academy. Over the weekend, we saw the likes of Mali Salmon come on in the Arsenal's game against Wigan Athletic. So oftentimes you will see these kinds of things. For Man City, when they were beating up against Salford, again, you saw the kinds of changes that they did. John Stones returned from injury and played in that one alongside Kushanov. They had Max Alenia, I think, at right back. They had Ryan Achinory, and then at left back with James Trafford in goal. So the likes of Nico Gonzalez, who had gone behind the pecking order of lottery in as far as the bigger games are concerned, did start that one. So Tijan Wiendas, who contrary to what the Premier League start of the season was, had not been starting many games. We got to see him back in the starting 11 against the likes of Omar Mamouche. So you had that sort of change. So usually that's what it means. Maybe fortunately, one would argue is that one would argue that perhaps Manchester City do have the kind of squad or the sort of squad where even within the reserve players, you're looking at a very, very strong team, and that very, very strong team is capable of beating up against any opponent. Because if if you're starting with that kind of starting 11, really, it's not that weak. You do not have many weak points, that you could point to, So that's one of the key draws for the 50th round of the FA Cup. In the other draws, Fulham have booked a date themselves. Now, Man City will be playing away. So Fulham will be at home against Southampton. Port Vale or Bristol City, that's the game I think that will be played on 3rd of next month. I don't know particularly why, but whoever advances between Port Vale and Bristol City will take on Sunderland. Then Leeds United will be at home against Norwich City. That's at Elland Road. Then Mansfield Town will entertain Arsenal. So that means Arsenal will be playing away to Mansfield Town. Then Wolverhampton Wanderers will be at home against Liverpool, while Wrexham, this is the team owned by the Hollywood star Ryan Reynolds, will be entertaining Chelsea. And then lastly is West Ham United will take on whoever advances between Macclesfield or Brentford. Whoever advances between the two tonight is the one that will have a date with West Ham. So those are the draws. I think overall it's been a fair draw if we are being honest. Of course, if you're a championship team, I said this in the morning that usually for me I would love for the lesser teams to have these games played on their own turf. So because of the significance of opponent that you get, just imagine Wigan Athletic we're having that game played on their home soil. Of course, for the bigger teams, it would mean perhaps more time on the road in terms of travel or in the air to get to whatever the destination is for your next run of fixture. But we know the sort of the financial implications, but also the entertainment, the memory of it when a smaller team welcomes, get to welcome a very big team. To their ground. We know that fans look forward to that kind of game. We know that clubs set even unique fees in terms of charges for those kinds of games. Oh, Son of Soweto. Let me come to that in a bit. So I'll give you an example. Just imagine Mamelodi Sundowns it's not the MTN Super 8. Just imagine Mamelodi Sundowns in one of those domestic cups is playing against one of those small teams from Soweto or from somewhere in the far corners of KwaZulu Natal. You'd rather, instead of that small village team going away to Sundowns, Mamelodi Sundowns, to be going the other way, because the entire locality, the entire community will be eager to come and see those Sundown Stars. The other example I can give, let's use these very examples. So just imagine you come from a small town and they tell you, okay, let's use in the UEFA Champions League. For those of you that remember, we had a game between Kairati Almaty at home. These are from Kazakhstan, hosting Real Madrid. So you can imagine what that means for a small town, or a small town, even if it is a fairly big town, but what it means to host stars from a very big team. So that sort of sense, that sort of feeling, it changes the mood around the community. It's something they never forget. Even when their club, their own local team increases fares to the stadium, they understand, because they know that to get to watch these stars play is something. And then the kind, and by the way, usually these teams never, get sort of thrashed or just given a drubbing. They put in a fight that is worthy, that even if they eventually lose the game, their fans can understand there's something to take away from the game. Whether it's a save from a goalkeeper, whether it's one of those good tackles by one of their defenders, and things like that. So it has that element to it. So it means, and we know that football goes beyond just the pitch. It goes just beyond the pitch. For us here locally, or I do not know what happens in other developed countries, but in the event, in such a big event or on such a day, this is when you're going to see vendors, selling all sorts of club merchandise. You're going to have street vendors selling snacks and drinks and things like that. So it means more to the town than when it means, when a smaller team is making the reverse trip, because to the big team, it's just a small team coming to our ground. In fact, I don't know if you've noticed or you noticed, but over the weekend, you could see chunks of spaces in certain stadiums, including the Etihad Stadium, where you had spaces. Why? Because those fans are thinking to themselves, it's Salford City. We're going to beat them anyway, regardless of what happens. And yeah, we'll have to wait for the next one, we'll have to wait for the next one. So, and things like that, really. So that's what it means for them. So when it comes to these draws, and that's why I'm saying I'm really happy. Are you an Arsenal fan? Yes, I am, but a football fan first. So Arsenal going away to Mansfield Town, that means more, Sunderland going away to either Port Vale or Bristol City, that means more, it means something. So those are some of the fixtures that you have, in this particular case. You sound like an Arsenal fan. I had hoped not, but yeah, I am one. But football comes first for me. Okay, Son of Soweto says, what do you think of Patrice Motsepe being the president of South Africa? Now, I cannot speak to the understanding or to the level of civic education and the appreciation of Patrice Motsepe, either as a politician or as a businessman. I've not known him to be a politician. At least I've known him to be a businessman, and then subsequently a football leader. Whether because he went through a vote to get that position as CAF president makes him a politician at a certain level, I do not know. But and then we have the dynamics of parties in South Africa, where you have the ANC, which is the leading party, but its sort of popularity has sort of dwindled over the years. You have the EFF party, sort of the prodigal sons of ANC, led by Julius Malema. Julius Malema. Then you have recently the former president in Jacob Zuma forming his, own political party, I think he tried to name it Umukhonto Wesiziwe, or Umukhonto Wesiziwe, which is traditionally known as the ANC fighting group, which was more like the army group of the ANC, and things like that. So, and then I think you have, is it a Green Party, So I do not know much about the dynamics of a South African or South Africa's politics in relation to Patrice Motsepe. But one thing I can tell you is that he's proven to be a great leader or a good leader, especially in terms of business, in terms of vision and direction for what he wishes for African football. I can only imagine, especially for a country that has quite a good number of brains when it comes to a business, when it comes to leadership or vision, what he would wish for South Africa. But as you also know with politics, sometimes it's not as straightforward as you think. We know for a fact that people like Julius Malema, who, for example, would want significant land reforms, or that's what they advocate for in their policies as a party. It's easier said than done, you know, that if we get to power, then we'll do ABCD. I remember, I think a couple of years ago, he was taken to court for and being accused of singing, I think, songs that were inciting violence against a certain racial group when he was singing, I think, Kill the Boer and things like that. So, unfortunately, beyond that sort of commentary, there's not much I can say about, Patrice Motsepe, but he does come off to me as a football follower on the continent, with the sort of the vision and the ambition that he has for African football. He comes off as a good leader, somebody that is visionary, somebody that is been intentional. He's not going to be perfect. I do not think any leader is ever perfect, but suddenly he's gotten so many things right. And I remember saying this in the aftermath of the Africa Cup of Nations 2023 that was played in 2024 in Ivory Coast. That's the most entertaining Africa Cup of Nations I have gotten to witness. And mind you, I may not have followed all the African Cups as much or minute by minute, but I've at least had a fair share of following them since 2004 when Tunisia won the competition. I think they beat up against Morocco by 2-1 in the final. So I've followed quite a number of editions, including Zambia's, surprise triumph in 2012 when they beat Ivory Coast 8-7 on post-match penalties, and then Burkina Faso making it to the finals in 2013 before losing to Nigeria. So I've sort of seen a fair share of them. And then the uncontrolled tears of Andre Ayew, Jordan Ayew, and all the other cohort of Ghana players who lost the 2010 final by 1-0 against Egypt when Egypt were winning the third consecutive Africa Cup of Nations. So I contend that under his leadership, we've gotten that sort of entertainment. We've seen an improvement in broadcast revenue, in commercial revenue at that level. He's significantly increased, prize money for the competitions and participatory fees, which if perhaps the destination countries use those resources well, they can better their own football in terms of setting up infrastructure for their respective federations and football on a wider basis within those respective countries. Of course, you have unscrupulous leaders who would want to individually benefit from those resources that come in the form of prize money and participation money from a CAF. So that's what I'll put that at that. Okay, you say that's true. You're an Arsenal fan. You sound like a staunch Ghana. Arsenal last won anything in 2004. When you say last won anything, when you say 2004, my mind goes to the Premier League. That's what you're talking about. But when you say anything, I could say 2020, they won the FA Cup. You have to go back to 2017, they won the FA Cup. You go to back 2015 and 2014. So even in 2005, they beat Manchester United, I think 5-4 on penalties to win the FA Cup. So but yeah, if you're talking about the Premier League title, then you're spot on about that. You say, thanks for your analysis on Motsepe. I wanted to see if you thought that he could transition from CAF president to state president as he is now maneuvering to position himself. Thanks. I mean, if he has the ambition, let him go for it. To be honest, like I said, I do not know much about the politics of South Africa until Cyril Ramaphosa, until his son married the daughter of our former Prime Minister, John Patrick Amama Mbabazi, who contested in the 2016 election. I didn't know much about Cyril Ramaphosa. And then he fast forward, Jacob Zuma is forced out of office. And then here comes this guy who seems quite cool-headed, assured of himself. I've never seen Ramaphosa look shaken. You know, he always exudes confidence. He always exudes leadership. even amidst all the intimidation from the United States of America, recently with President Donald Trump, about what he deems as genocide, killing the whites in South Africa, which is contrary to that. He's not looked. He hasn't looked shaken. He's gone over to the USA to try and negotiate certain deals, and even though he came out empty-handed, you've never felt that his ground has been shaken. When South Africa hosted the ZAT summit that you guys recently hosted, I'm trying to remember, and in the handover, is it the G20? I think is it the G20 summit, during which you're supposed to hand over to the United States, and then President Trump boycotted that one. Initially, he had said they would come, and he himself had said he would not come, but the Vice President, J.D. Vance, was supposed to come, but then fast forward, they changed their mind and said he won't come. But and then they tried to say, "Oh, we'll send our ambassador to come and receive." And then President Cyril Ramaphosa, I think through his Minister of Foreign Affairs, said, "Now we'll organize for you a small function during which we can hand over with a member worthy of your dignitary that you're sending to meet us halfway, and we do the handover." So things like that. So if he's trying to position himself as such, let's wait and see. Talk about the rumors of denying East Africa a chance to host AFCON. Now, again, I don't want to call them rumors. Okay, I don't want to call them rumors. It's merely speculation, and speculation that is backed by history. Why, in 1996, for most people that may not remember, Kenya had won the rights to host the Africa Cup of Nations. But because towards the tournament, they were deemed infrastructurally unready to host the competition, it was transferred to South Africa. And that's how South Africa ended up winning their only Africa Cup of Nations in 1996. And we're talking about a country that had been also banned from the tournament for quite some time, or had stayed away. So then you fast forward, I think in 2019, you remember that edition that was supposed to be hosted by Cameroon? It was, rights were handed over then to Egypt. And then Cameroon later hosted the 2021 edition. It's because Cameroon were not ready by the time of the tournament. And the other example is, look at a tournament that they've since scrapped away. That's the African Nations Championships. The last edition having been played in 2025, that was hosted by Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. Now, that was sort of the curtain riser to this whole AFCON thing. And you saw how many times it was postponed just to allow these countries to get ready. First of all, out of the three countries, Kenya has the biggest economy, the biggest and the best economy of the three countries. Then Tanzania, I'm not too familiar with their economics, but they are somewhere. If we are comparing shillings, the Ugandan shilling is the weakest of the three, because I think when it comes to exchange rate, it's about the 25 one Kenyan shilling is the equivalent of about 25 to 30 Ugandan shillings. And for Tanzania, one Tanzanian shilling is the equivalent of about 1.5 or 1.7 Ugandan shillings. So there the margins are quite small. But we know that we're talking about countries who are trying to grow their domestic sport in terms of football. Again, when it comes to the domestic league, Tanzania has a better domestic league, especially with gigantic clubs like Young Africans, like Simba, and then, of course, likes of Azam and all the others that have been, trying to come up. And then over there in Kenya, you have clubs like Gor Mahia. I'm trying to remember some of the other teams. But in terms of, this boils down to readiness. And we were speaking about this the other day, and I said, readiness is not just about the football infrastructure. There's also supportive infrastructure. So, for example, you could put up the nice stadiums, But how about the infrastructure leading to those stadiums? Now, the beauty about East Africa is that overall, especially with the three countries, that in the grand scheme of things, overall, insecurity is not an issue. We have relatively good security. Of course, when you speak to the locals, they'll tell you, okay, we have these kinds of crimes and blah, 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 but that's part of any society. So when you, for example, Uganda, last year, before the end of last year, they unveiled and I think this was on the 24th of December, the president officially commissioned or opened the newly constructed Hoima City Stadium. You can Google it, you'll see the images. It's a 20,000-seater stadium that has a 2,000-seater indoor games arena. It has a mini Olympic-sized swimming pool. When I say mini, half the standard size of an Olympic swimming pool. And then it has a tennis court. It has a basketball court. It has, I think, maybe, is it a volleyball court? So it looks good. It's sort of a multi-purpose facility. So that one is ready. But then you have all this infrastructure leading to the stadium. You need hotels near the stadium and things like that. So the refurbishments, Nambole has been undergoing a lot of refurbishment. And there's phase 3 coming. And apparently, initially, the project was going to be handed over to Suma, the Turkish company. But I do not know who convinced the powers that be that it should be handed to the UPDF Construction Brigade. That's the National Army. They have a construction brigade. Okay. Michael Matrov says, talk about rumors of denying. Okay. Yes, that's what we are discussing. So now, then when you go to Kenya, their Talanta Stadium is nearing completion. In Tanzania, the Samia Suluhu Stadium is nearing completion. They already have a Benjamin Mkapa Stadium. They already have, what's the other name of the stadium? In Kenya, they have a Nyayo Stadium. They have Kasarani Stadium. And, they are not yet facility ready, perfect 100%, but you could say at least 60% ready. In Uganda, you still have the ongoing construction of the John Akibwa Stadium in Rila City. I think it's another 20,000-seater stadium. So, but like I said, it goes beyond just the stadium. You have the supportive infrastructure, like, highways or roads. You have hotels, because AFCON comes with a demand for real estate in terms of, stadia. But the stadium is so big to host a small number of people. Which stadium is so big to host a small number of people? You'll be surprised. Of course, even at the biggest of tournaments, including the World Cup, you will see certain games where stadiums are empty or half full, depending. So, for example, if, let's say, Ghana is playing Haiti at the World Cup, whether it's in Russia, whether it's in South Africa, whether it's in the USA, whether it's in Germany, whether it's in the UK, that kind of game is going to have a low turnout. So Kenya is constructing a 60,000-seater stadium. But remember, like I said, Kenya's economy is big, and they have the capability to support these structures for sustenance. Because usually when you set up these structures, the question is the sustenance. And sustenance is with maintenance. Can they host the kind of events or projects that keep them running? That's why, for me, I was an advocate, I still am, an advocate of a public-private partnership. So look at how many of our traditional big clubs, and particularly in Uganda, do not have their own home grounds. Look at Express FC. They've been co-owning that space with the Buganda Kingdom, and either they've failed or deliberately refused to develop it, because I don't know if the risk for both sides is too big, but they haven't. So just imagine government comes in and says, look here, Buganda Kingdom, Express, come to the table. we'll meet you halfway, commit these resources, we'll commit this, and let's have this, a place constructed. And what would we require? This, if government is going to have events, we will have a pre-agreed on calendar every year to say government has these functions, they'll be hosted here, we'll use the space, no need of rent fees, and blah, 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 vice versa. Or government will provide security at a discounted rate, whatever the modalities are, and you get to that. Now, with the Hoima City Stadium, I'm thinking once the AFCON is done, Chitara should be pitching to say, let's use this as a home ground. First of all, Chitara is, in recent times, been one of those clubs that have the numbers in terms of fans, and also, we need to disassociate ourselves from increasing the price of games just because they are being played in a fancy stadium. You've seen it with the Uganda Cranes. Just because it's Nambole, newly recently refurbished Nambole, they want you to pay extra, literally, for the game. Make the game affordable. Let fans have the experience. And once you grow the demand, eventually, supply takes its care of itself. Because if for example, present day you have, let's say 5,000 on average, 5,000 football fans, or even if it is 3,000 fans attending Kitara Football Club home games, increase that to 10,000 in the next year or two. From that, take it to 12,000, 15,000. Now, when you begin reaching those numbers, and remember, success attracts success. The more numbers you have, the more other people you attract, because we human beings are like bees or houseflies. Where others have gone is we want to also go and see what's happening over there. So you have that ripple effect. So once you grow those numbers, then you can then begin adjusting your ticket prices, but begin from as low as 3,000 shillings. The goal is that to attract as many numbers as possible, for as long as you can meet the costs of stadium security, the infrastructure maintenance in terms of cleaning the environment so that you leave everything in shape and things like that. So you need that. So that's got to be the question. Now, for a team like for the John Akibua Stadium, the question would be which team plays there, because ordinarily, I've not seen any team in the top flight coming from Lila City. When we talk about the Ondo Parakas, Arua Hill, they were all from West Nile. And we remember the kind of vibe Ondo Parakat brought. We remember the Kongoros, that's Arua Hill, and they've since fallen behind the pecking order, which also takes me the conversation of Engineer Moses Magogo's preferred model of, he keeps talking about community clubs and blah, blah, blah. But in our experience in Uganda, community clubs have not been that successful, in terms of sustenance. Because in our own way of life is that if the moment the team slips and they go to the big league, regional league, then we sort of like, we will come back to you when you come back in the top flight, kind of, you get. So that eventually breaks down teams. How many teams have we seen go back to the big league and then either been sold off or ended up, vanishing from the face of the earth? Some of you may remember Chirayang. Some of you may remember Reza FC. Chirayang, I think, had players like Beka Lukoya. I think he played for, Chirayang, so really. So it's sort of a wider conversation when it comes to how these investments are protected. But in terms of the threat of postponing, it is based on that one, we have precedents of CAF, handing over the rights to other more prepared nations to host the edition. And in this particular case, we're going to have AFCON 2027 be played between June and July. That will be during the season break. 2, so they wouldn't want to postpone it anywhere beyond that. So, and CAF is sending a select committee to come and assess the readiness of the 3 East African countries. And recently, when Dr. Patrice Motsepe was speaking in Tanzania, he said there are no plans to, take away the rights from Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, and that everything will go on. And he does expect that it will be a very, very exciting tournament that the three countries will host. So we do look forward to it. It will also facilitate inter or domestic, what we call domestic tourism. I know a couple of friends, not too many, but a couple of them, who have driven to Hoima just to go and tour the Hoima City Stadium. So you have that kind of thing. So that means something. That means something. So really, you can imagine that. Okay. Let me read some of your other comments and then we proceed with the conversation. Pedri said, hey, Pedri joins us from Spain. Meanwhile, Brentford are leading now by goal to nil against Mansfield Town. I understand why Pedri is not here with us. I'd forgotten. For some reason, it had slipped my mind. But Barcelona are in action tonight against Girona, and that game is into halftime. So let's, I think, look forward to the second half. How did I forget? How did I forget? Who is from Spain? my Spanish-speaking friend. Unless you migrated, Pedri. To the best of my knowledge, you reside in Spain. To the best of my knowledge could be wrong. So correct me if I'm wrong. Anyways, so, okay. Let me first read the other comments. Okay. It's part, but the stadium is so big to host that small number of people. Again, yeah, I understand that, but you have to start somewhere. You have to start somewhere. Because, you see, what example can I give you? Look at KCCA's home games. If you have ever attended any KCCA home game, you have at least sometimes 15,000 people crammed in that space that is supposed to host about 10,000 people, you know? So the demand is there. It's not as big, but it can improve. You just need to sort of facilitate it in a way. Why? Because remember, an ordinary sports fan is going to spend on transport to get there. So they will spend on a ticket. I'll give you an example. I had this suggestion that if you're Maroons FC and you host your games at the Prisons grounds in Luzira, get a loudspeaker, these are announcers, and drive around Luzira, Chitintale, Mutungo, Abina, Luzira Chirombe, places like Chireka, Boyogerere, Mbuya, and by extension Nakawa, Bugolobi, that sort of locality. Now, say, for those of you that are going to watch the game is 3,000. But we'll have vans from each direction. And I remember at that time, I wanted them to have partnerships with Pioneer Easy Bus to say, if you buy a ticket of 5,000 and you stay within Chireka, you stay within Motungo, you stay within what, Chitintare, what, that ticket comes with transport of to and from. In other words, you're being charged 3,000 for the game. That's what the club is taking. The 2,000 is a bus fare, but it's all on one ticket. All you need to do is go to the bus with your ticket, show it, and then you'll access the bus, and then you go. And these same buses can even sell tickets, can help you sell the tickets. So that was my idea. So even if the stadium could be, for example, a bit of a distance, let's say away from Hoima City, just say your ticket is 10,000 shillings, but it caters for transport to and from if the distance is that big. So, and you take it from there. Of course, you're not always going to have 2,000 fans from day one until day last. It grows, and also sport grows with winning. The more you win, the more fans you attract, It comes out of that. And then in addition to that, you'll have people that will come on a particular match day just to see or to feel what it means to be inside that stadium. So it will grow with time. All right. Then you say, and what do you think of the turn up if it so happens that Uganda shall host in that particular stadium? The turn up will be huge. The turn up will be huge. Guys, let me tell you, do you know that there are people who drive from Uganda to Kenya just to go and watch it's called the Safari Rally? It's a rally that's racing cars in a national park. People, there's a lot of sports tourism. Do you know, for example, when regional tournaments are organized, look at, for example, the provinces in the FUFA drum. People travel. Just the other day, I was watching a video clip of Vipers fans who were helping dislodge a tree that I think had fallen in the road somewhere in Mabira. But they were going to Boyikwe, I think, or Lugazi. I think they were going to Lugazi for a game of football. So people can travel, and 20,000 may sound so many to you, but trust me, you may get to a point that you can't even access a ticket for 20,000. I don't want to use the example of Nambole because Kampala metropolitan area is that overly populated, but just know, even if the stadium was to be put in Kabale, if people want to go, they will go. And then the question is, government just needs to put the infrastructure in place. For example, if there's public transport, to say from Kampala to Hoima, let me tell you, somebody will budget that it's going to cost them, let's say, 50 or 60,000 shillings. To and from, a bus fare is 10,000. To and then back 10,000, that's 20,000. Match ticket is 20,000. How much is that? 40. You get. Then they know I'll eat, but I'll not overeat. And then I'll sleep at a small lodge somewhere in the nearby town. So, or some people will organize themselves and drive themselves in a van. They contribute money for fuel, they go. So you could be amused of how far people are willing to go when it comes to domestic sport. At least I've seen a bit of that. You say Uganda constructed a huge, expensive stadium in Hoima with a very small seating capacity. Well, the reason as to why 20,000 is not too small, by the way. But here's what you have to consider. It's a multi-purpose sports facility. Remember, the stadium itself has a running track. The stadium itself has gym, what not. Like I told you, it has a mini Olympic-sized swimming pool. And then it has an indoor sports arena. And then it has tennis courts and basketball courts. So it has an outdoor training pitch. You get the way you have at Nambole. So it's not like they just constructed a 20,000 seater stadium quite expensively and put it there. No. That's not the case. You could debate about the cost of the stadium or the entire facility. You could debate that. That can be subject to debate. But I think 20,000 people is not too many, by the way. Look at the Vitality Stadium, which sits around 12, I think about 11,000 people. They want to increase it to 15,000. You can imagine. Look at stadiums like Craven Cottage, Selhurst Park, you know. So, and look at that. So I don't think 20,000 is too many. What actually makes it easy is that the question is on how much you charge for people to get there. Because, like I said, for you to attend a football match, you'll have to factor in other issues. If you need to eat something or need to drink something, transport, that's very critical. That's very critical. Do you think if KCCA had a 30,000 seater stadium, they would fail to fill it? I think they can fill it. Maybe not for every game, but they can. Again, my idea for KCCA was have a partnership with Pioneer is a bus. Say a match ticket is 5,000. Or actually, say a match ticket is 7,000. What is part of the 7,000? 5,000 essentially for the match, 2,000 is for the bus fare, to and back from the stadium. Meeting point is City Square. That's where you bought from. Bus takes you to the stadium and then back, you know, for as long as you have your match ticket. So in other words, your match ticket would correspond to a bus number. So for example, then we had Pioneer Easy Bus. They were about 100 at the start. So let's say your ticket number is 300. Maybe that means the seat in the stadium, whatever. But then you're on bus 50. So that you're not everybody is trying to fight for, you know, a particular bus. So you're simply looking for, you have a seat on a bus, on bus 50. That is taking you from just Kampala down to Lugogo. It can be that simple. You know, you've seen what the Uganda Railways have tried to do when there are games at Namboli, to say, yeah, our trains will be working and they'll take you for only 2,000 shillings to Namboli. But for me, I wanted that cost on the ticket. Let me buy a ticket with transport factored in. Let these clubs go into partnerships with you know, some of these entities, you know, with either transport companies, with water companies. Do you know what it means if, let's say, you're going to watch a game of football at Philippe Omondi Stadium and you buy a ticket of 10,000, but you know, if you work within the city center, you're going to go to City Square, get on a bus, Nirvana, as let's say a club sponsor, is going to give you a bottle of water. But not because they are giving it to you for free, but it's part of the ticket that you bought. So KCCA, when the KCCA receives their money, they know we have to pay Pioneer Easy Bus for every passenger that they ferried from the city center to the game, 2,000 shillings to and from, and then 500 shillings or 1,000 for water, you know. So it's about trying to build these partnerships. And I do not think it's rocket science. I do not think people do not have those ideas. They've just not walked the talk. They've just not walked the talk. You know, for me, it boils down to that. They've just not walked the talk. And I believe they are capable of doing that. Just imagine, you see, Chitende is a bit far, you know, but just imagine that Viper says, if you're working within the city center, first of all, every match day we'll have, let's say, 5 buses, or we'll avail 5 buses, or we have a partnership maybe with this bus company to bring our fans to the stadium. You buy a ticket of, let's say, 12,000, but that ticket has transport to and from the stadium in Chitende, from town to Chitende, and from Chitende back to town. As simple as that. So in other words, you're not worried about transport. So then, we all know we have lead cars for hire. Talk with police, fuel a lead car to lead these buses. to move at once. Assume there are 5 buses of each ferrying about, let's say, 50 people. That's 200 fans already that you're bringing to the game. If everybody paid 12,000 and we're assuming the fare, because it's a bus, it's large, taking many people, so they're going to pay about, let's say, 5,000 of transport to and from, to 5. So that means the club has 7,000. And then another overhead cost of paying for a police lead car for about 100,000 or 150,000. So a fan is assured, 1, I have my seat on the bus. 2, I'm secure in terms of going. I'm rest assured of coming back, because once the game ends, I'm boarding the same bus I came with to bring me back to the city center. You know, so I feel it's workable. For as long as we feel the need to, we'll find the solutions. We'll find the solutions. You know, the solutions are there. Of course, Uganda in itself has its challenge that now Pioneer Easy Bus collapsed, so you do not have a town service bus company. You have a company, I think it was Wakule Numi, but there were only a handful, actually not that many, you know, going to Gayaza. Meanwhile, Barcelona are leading in their game by a 0-0. They've just scored. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see the goal. So yeah, there's that. For me, I'm not worried about the capacity of the stadiums. All I'm concerned about is how do we maintain them, but it's by making football games affordable. I always pose the question, what good is it for a club to host a game, charge 10,000 for a match ticket, and you have 1,000 fans, as opposed to charging 5,000 and you have 4,000 fans? You get? What good is it for you to charge 10,000 for the game and have 2,000 fans, as opposed to charging 3,000 and have maybe 8,000 or 10,000 fans? You know, so we have to look at it in the perspective of, we are trying to grow this thing. It's not grown. It's far from it. You know, it's far from it. So for the people that think for football in Uganda, I'm sure I'm sure they can bring these ideas to work. Okay. Thomas Lemar has just scored for Girona to make it 1-1. So it's Barcelona 1, Girona 1. Okay. All right. CAF gave us to host with all the capacity inadequacies, and they are in it so deep, I think, to recall it, moreover, from 3 nations who, with all the infrastructure inadequacies. Now, they knew about our infrastructure inadequacies, but when you give somebody the opportunity, you give them also the opportunity to prepare. I'll give you an example. People think that Rwanda has just started working on their stadiums and things like that, on building sports infrastructure. A lot of people forget that they hosted CHAN 2016, which DRC Congo won. A lot of people forget that. So they've gone through a journey. Now, Rwanda had made a bid to host, I think, AFCON 2029. Rwanda, small as they are as a country, they made a single bid to host. 2, I don't know if you've noticed, but Kenya and Tanzania are positioning themselves to a scenario of where they say, should if, let's say, Uganda is deemed inappropriately or is deemed unprepared, that they, Kenya and Tanzania, can say, let's take it on, just the two of us. That's why in Kenya's submission, they have, I think, about 4 or 6 stadiums that they are putting to the table to say, oh, this can host. So all they need is CAF approval. You get. And then Tanzania, there are 2 stadiums that ought to be inspected, I think in Zanzibar. On mainland Tanzania, I think there's already about 3 and another under construction, or 2 with another under construction. So they're trying to put themselves in that kind of framework. But like I said, you remember, let me give you the example. In 2007, Uganda hosted CHOGM. Forget the scandals that transpired in the aftermath, but CHOGM gave Uganda an opportunity to work on itself in terms of infrastructure. They worked on Entebbe Road, they worked on all sorts of roads, they worked on some hotels. Of course, some collapsed and people ate the money, being Uganda. But in hosting that summit, the CHOGM, Uganda moved an inch in terms of infrastructure development. So it is upon Uganda to live to the bidding. It's not upon CAF to live to the bidding. CAF can wake up and say, okay, yeah, we would have loved it to be in Uganda, but yeah, South Africa, do you think you can host this? And yeah, South Africa is like, yeah, we have the stadium ready. Let's take it on, and they take it on. By the way, the idea of putting the runway around the playground creates quite a long distance between the spectators and players. It's unfair for me to go to the stadium and still watch the game on screen. Again, I understand where you're coming from. And I think one of the reasons as to why the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium is so appealing is because it doesn't have that sort of, you're closer to the playing turf. Then also, I think you've seen the Diego Armando Maradona Stadium in Naples, where Napoli hosts their games. I think it's an Olympic kind of stadium where you have a running track. Yes, that is true. It puts fans a bit further away. It's the same thing with Nambole, But that's the giveaway of constructing a multi-purpose facility. You're going to have some takeaways or losses in that regard. But also, you may not watch the entire game on screen. No, not really. Let me ask. You have the Santiago Bernabeu, which is an 80,000 seater. Do you think you're going to be in that stadium further than the 70,000th fan in the Bernabeu? No. So, and by the way, a lot of fans, even those that are closer to the playing turf, watch that game on the screen. You know why? All the replays, all the fun moments, because even when you're very close, there are moments you're going to miss. And they will show them to you on screen. But I understand where you're coming from when it comes to the distance. It's an issue, but it's a give and take. You win some and lose some. So you know that, because usually tickets that are closer, or people that sit closer to the playing turf or closer to the pitch cost more, and prices could reduce as you go far away. That's true. But remember, these facilities are constructed in such a way that you can see. You can see what's happening. Of course, you may not be able to see in exactness the way somebody that is closer will see. But the idea of putting the running track is, tomorrow Uganda wakes up and says, we want to host the Olympics. They'll say, we have this stadium, it has a running track, it has this, it has that. We also have another one in Nambole. It has this, it has that, you know. Now, for me, given how big the land in Nambole is, I was of the view that Nambole be redone and then we make it a multi-purpose sports complex. You have a stadium, you have a training ground, you have you can have all indoor games, from pool table to ludo to swimming to gymnastics, all of it, javelin, shot put, whatever you may call it, because it's strategically located. All you need is to improve, widen on the parking space, improve on access roads. These Chinawataka roads need to be expanded. Let them be dual carriages at the very least. Let the train be operative. You know, you've heard about the East African Games. Schools go and participate in all manners of games in a sporting complex, you know. So it's doable. It's not rocket science. There's also an event called the All East African Games. Of course, they don't have the kind of traction or that you would want them to have. But again, we have to be intentional on improving these things. But number is sizable enough that it can accommodate all those things. I know for a fact that government had, I think, signed a memorandum with SUMA to construct, for example, to do Lugogo Indoor Sports Arena. They want to shift, I think, cricket from the cricket over, and then they have all that place taken over for indoor sports games. The way you have the Kigali Arena. So you can imagine if you can get that, you know. We'll just have to wait and see. But for me, I still think anything is possible. I've not yet, even I know that, first of all, I'm frustrated with the lack of pace. I feel that there's a slowness when it comes to infrastructure development, and particularly to do the roads, because I look at the state of our roads and I'm thinking, we are going to host AFCON, and somebody needs to spend 2 hours from Entebbe to Kampala, you know, and look at alternative routes like Nakauka Road. You know, they've done Chira Kasangati Road, and instead of making it as wide as possible, they've decided to cram it. Jesus Christ. Joan Garcia, with I don't know how many saves. I think he had about 4 saves in less than a minute, as Girona tried to find the lead. He saves a rebound, he saves a header, he saves. Jesus Christ. Impressive stuff. Anyways, the game between Mansfield Town and Brentford has ended 1-0 in favor of Brentford. So yeah, Girona are proving to be a little stubborn. Lecce and Cagliari, that game goes to 0. And then let's talk about referee Chris Kavanagh. Now, Chris Kavanagh will not be officiating any Premier League game in the next round of Premier League games. Why? Because he had a very shambolic performance over the weekend when he took charge of the game between Aston Villa and Newcastle. First of all, Aston Villa scored a goal through Tammy Abraham, who was in an offside position. He, Chris Kavanagh, and his assistant, called Nick Greenlag, did not see it, or pretended not to see it. So they get that decision wrong. Then Newcastle score an equalizer. I don't remember who the goal scorer was, but Dan Burn had been in an offside position when they scored the equalizer. Then you had Lucas Digne handle the ball inside the area, I think about 2 yards inside the box. And then the referee pointed for a free kick outside the box. Then Lucas Digne should have been sent off with a red card. But he did not send him off. So they had so many bad decisions in that game that the Premier League has decided they won't take part in the next phase of the Premier League. And for me, that's what I keep saying. For me, I want there to be more than just, literally what passes for giving you a weekend's break. Let there be actual consequences for referees making some oddly bad decisions. Now, like I said in the morning, I do give referees the benefit of the doubt because we react to these situations because we get to see them in replay and make judgment. Wow. The only difference in this game, I think, so far in the second half is Joan Garcia and Girona. Because, trust me, Joan Garcia is making save after save. Wow. Brilliant piece of goalkeeping there. Making the save with his leg. Anyways, so, for me, I'm of a view that that referees should be penalized more. Like I said, for us, we have the benefit of doubt. You get to watch the incident in replay and say, yeah, the referee got this one wrong. And usually the referee has to see it in a snapshot to make a decision. But there's no way you tell me a player handles the ball inside the area, 2 yards inside the area. The linesman does not inform you to say he was in the area, he was in the box. Then you assume that you've seen it from outside the area as opposed to where it happened in the area, and you do not give a penalty. You get. Basically, it was a weekend of so many wrong refereeing decisions. Like we started off with the preamble when I was reminding you about Pierre Carullo's red card in their 3-2 loss against Inter Milan. Bastoni hoodwinks the referee into thinking that Carullo had pulled him, but he literally did not touch him. Literally. He dives, and the referee quickly, the way he rushes to dish out that yellow card, like almost is 100% sure of what he's seen. And yet he's been hoodwinked. But also, where's the common sense? Why does the referee say it's such a big game? These things are going to happen. You're already on a yellow card. Let me just issue you with a warning and say, look here, do not use you've used up your lack of chips or your chips lack. And the next foul you do, unfortunately, I'll have to send you off. Where is that? You remember, for example, Michael Oliver. There was an Arsenal game against Wolverhampton Wanderers. 2 yellow cards to Gabriel Martinelli in an instance. To say yellow card for the foul there, yellow card for the foul there, in the same run of play. And I'm thinking to myself, give one yellow card and say, you also committed another one there. I should be booking you for that, but I won't. So you've used up your bucket. The next foul you commit, you're off. So referees did not do themselves any favors over the weekend. Anyways, guys, it's been 1 hour and 13 minutes of this podcast. I'll continue watching this Barcelona game until its conclusion. But so far, Girona have been very unlucky not to score the second. Of course, the one they had scored was ruled out for offside. They haven't been clinical enough, but Joan Garcia has been the difference thus far. Thus far. And it's not looking easy for Barcelona. First of all, they are under pressure. Real Madrid won over the weekend when they beat Real Sociedad by 4-1. So if this game ends in a draw, that means Barcelona remain in second place, a point behind Real Madrid. So, if they win, they'll go back to the top spot with a point ahead of Real Madrid. So that's the significance of this game and why why it means the world to Barcelona, or why they feel they must win. Anyways, guys, thank you so much, Michael. Thank you so much, Morris. Thank you so much, Pedri. Thank you so much, son of Soweto. Thank you so much, Swaki, from South Africa as well. All those that liked, all those that didn't like, but have been part of the broadcast in some respect for whichever how long. I do appreciate you a great deal. So allow me wish you a blessed night. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. or 9 a.m., 9:30, thereabout, to once again go through the events from the world of football. Of course, the UEFA Champions League playoffs get underway tomorrow. So there's that. We'll be discussing that and a lot more in our broadcast tomorrow. But yeah, thank you so much for the engagement. I wish you a blessed night, and let's link up again tomorrow. Bye-bye for now.